Hello, it's John Galante with another TecHome Builder webcast, this time sponsored by PointCentral. And our topic today is a systematic approach to multifamily tech. So here's the purpose, and I'll talk through our presenters and the flow that we're going to follow today. So I think our goal is really to introduce a new framework for analyzing investments in multifamily technology. And that's really about ensuring high quality decisions for the multifamily companies that are considering tech investments. I don't think there is an agreed to framework, and this is at least a starting place for you all to what is sometimes a vexing and sprawling category of stuff, multifamily technology. I'm joined today by Mike Branam, who's Director of Multifamily Sales for PointCentral. PointCentral is sponsoring this session, and Mike's one of our key contributors. And Taylor Wiederkehr, who's the founder and CEO of Innovative NOI. So the flow is going to be this. We have 4 categories that we're going to talk through, and I'll dig in on that, but it's resident experience, building operations, tech platform compatibility, and financial analysis and performance. And that we'll let you know what we're talking about, you looking at in each of those buckets and how that can get you to better decisions. So let me keep on going here. I think I want to talk about the origins of this session a little bit. When we decided to do this a few months ago, Mike, I think our initial concept was, let's share some case studies, some proof of performance, PointCentral working with clients and getting good results. And that would have been, I think, a fascinating webcast. But as we talk through it, I think we kind of arrived in this spot, which is, how do we help? And I think it's more essential, more useful for multifamily companies is, how can we systematically work through some of the key factors that should be considered along with technology investments and therefore get to a better decision making. And I want to jump right into that. And start at the very top here with resident experience, because it's the alpha of the multifamily business. If you're not taking care of those residents, if you're not giving them an experience and value, there's not much of a business left. You can do everything else right, but if you don't have residents, so what? So let's talk about resident experience and what the typical factors are that are considered regarding tech in the resident experience.
Sure. So thanks, John, and thanks for this session. So good to be with you both today. Starting with the resident component to this, the reality is, most residents already have some form of smart home technology today, and in most cases, they want more of it. Or they want this technology to help simplify their lives, provide more peace of mind, as it relates to, maybe it's just checking to see if their door locked when they go to the airport, or just checking to make sure their thermostat was set appropriately. And I joke about this, but it's really not a joke. Just a couple of weeks ago here in Denver, we went from 90 degrees and we had 9 inches of snow the next day. So for those folks that may have left town that did not have a smart thermostat, they might have come home to a problem. With bursted pipes and things of that nature. So, residents they're savvy. They understand the technology. They already have it in most cases, and they want more of it. So whenever they have some of those opportunities to either customize their living experience or provide some peace of mind, it just makes a lot of sense. And historically, that's been sort of off the table for folks who live in rental communities. It's been on the table for the homeowner. And that's not the case anymore for folks in the rental environment. The other consideration I'd say, though, is, from the property management perspective, and I know we're going to get into a lot of this today, but I just say quickly, that of course they want to provide benefits for their residents, but they have to make sense for the building, for the asset owner, and the folks who are operating the building too.
Right.
And so I know we'll funnel and flow into that conversation as well. But those are a couple really important considerations, I think, when we start with that resident experience.
Right. And for the resident experience, kind of the big buckets are convenience, comfort, and what you're calling peace of mind or security in terms of the most broadly adopted smart apartment sort of platforms. In some cases, we're getting into the AV stack and maybe more sophisticated forms of lighting control. But comfort, convenience, and peace of mind kind of summarize it in terms of core resident experience stuff.
Exactly right. And then, throw in as a plus one the opportunity to save on utility costs. Is something, especially in today's day and age, is that folks are mindful of, and there's an opportunity.
So how does PointCentral deliver on that stuff? So those are factors under consideration. What are the features, benefits, advantages you guys offer in those big buckets of benefits?
Sure. I'd start with just a single app solution, for this technology. So we sort of, we lasso all these different opportunities and we put it into a single app opportunity. I've heard this term more often the last several months, this app fatigue. That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that, when technology is delivered and it yields some pain or inconvenience, then it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
When you have a single app solution for a resident to move seamlessly throughout a building, not a fob for this entry point and a code for this point and Bluetooth over here. It really has to be a single app experience, a single pane of glass, if you will, for residents to flow throughout the building. And a piece is that customizable living experience, just to ensure that, some folks, like moods that are set for certain times. Some folks want to know that when they leave the apartment, they know that from geofencing, which we could do, that their thermostat will go down to an appropriate setting to start saving on costs, because you may forget to do that on a daily basis.
Right.
Having that customizable living experience that delivers the peace of mind, that's what PointCentral offers.
The individual resident has the ability to customize. It's not customized per property. Exactly
right. Once the resident downloads the app, then whatever devices are in that apartment home, they now have total control over. So that, for them, that gives them the opportunity to really change the lighting or set thermostats to an appropriate level for their life.
I think the single app thing is really important. And, those of us who've been in this space for a while, we understand like human factors, engineering, and latency, right? And I think we understand latency is not good, pushing buttons and waiting for things to happen, especially if it's critical process control stuff like lighting or getting in a door. But there's like experiential latency from the multi-app side of things, right? Because you're going to have latency scrolling through to get to the appropriate app. Whereas, if you're inside of your apartment app and able to toggle to different functions, you're going to get there much more quickly and affect whatever change you're looking for, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else we want to dig into on PointCentral's special sauce on resident experience?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start for us here today, John.
Okay. Well, then let's dig into that building operations piece. What are some of the key factors there?
So to me, this is one of the most important elements of implementing what I'd call a community automation solution. This is a really unique opportunity here to implement technology that, it's going to benefit the building, the owner and the operator, and the resident base. It's a really unique opportunity in our space. There's not many products that come across us where it checks those 3-4 boxes, right? Mm-hmm. So when an apartment community can streamline their access, their guest entry, and the in-unit smart technology on that single solution and integrate it with their primary property management software, there's a significant opportunity here to save on costs, to improve on these operational efficiencies and differentiate the community through a technology that's really a game changer for us.
Right. So I know we're going to dive deeper in methodically with Taylor on some of those operational savings categories, but just at a high level, it's maintenance, it's staffing to maintain properties, it's would you throw things like the self-tour capabilities into the building operations side of things? Are those categories? Is there anything else to add to the laundry list at a high level?
That's what I would add, and I'd use a couple examples here. I think on its surface, there, and especially a few years ago, Taylor, you and I have been out at this for a while, and I think at the surface level, it was, hey, this is a really cool amenity for our residents, and we might be able to see some rent lift as a result. I've really always been of the mindset that the Trojan horse is the operational efficiencies here, and then it flows into the benefits for the rest of the stakeholders. When we talk to maintenance professionals, I've heard a term, and I didn't make this up, but it was one of our maintenance friends that said, wow, for me, it's more wrench time, less key fishing. I think that just nailed it, right? There's just more opportunity there for what has historically been a really reactive environment. This breaks, we fix it, from a maintenance perspective. Then it's shifted here with this technology where, whether it's water sensors that are providing notifications that moisture is detected, or an HVAC alert that says, look, this system is running inefficiently. Now that reactive maintenance model is shifted from proactive and even preventative. And I think once we start talking that language, now we're talking task automation, we're talking time savings, cost savings, and significant risk mitigation. That's where I'd sort of have the maintenance conversation. You made a great point about self-guided tours. The goal of the technology is not to displace or replace leasing professionals. The reality is the marketplace is 95% occupied, plus or minus a few ticks. So a majority of the time, a leasing professional, we could probably even sort of reterm that name, that title, to someone that's really more focused on retention and community engagement. Because now if they're not scheduling and going on tours with no-show rates, and maybe there's a 50% closing ratio with someone that they tour through a property, now if they're focused on resident engagement and communication and making sure that folks are having a good experience while they're there, now you're having a fantastic impact with folks that are actually on site every day, impacting the folks who already live there.
Right. Hey, I want to drill down a little bit on that HVAC piece as it regards your platform and your app, because it strikes me that you got, both resident experience benefit and building operations benefit. To the extent that the resident is paying for those energy costs, there's an ability to economize by operating that HVAC system optimally. But you're also getting diagnostic information through to the building, and to the extent that they're responsible for repair and heading off catastrophic repairs, there's benefits there. Is that accurate?
It's absolutely accurate. So, we've got 8 million plus thermostats in place nationwide. So, with that, we get really useful, quantifiable data and analytics, business intelligence that tell us if an HVAC is not performing to an efficient threshold. We've had conversations. I've been in leasing offices where they say, Mike, you know what this does for us? We don't have the resident walking down with a bill saying, I'm not paying this. Your HVAC system failed on me. Why should I be on the hook? So we're not only avoiding these uncomfortable conversations, but if we're giving insight into a performance issue with the system, again, there's that opportunity for preventative maintenance. But we've even seen it from a forecasting standpoint where groups will say, hey, look, it looks like we've had about 6 or 7 per year that have started to sort of break down on us. We need to proactively get ahead of this during our budget process next year.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's talk about platform compatibility as the third quadrant. what type of platforms does a smart apartment platform or building management solution like yours, what do you have to integrate with? And how does PointCentral check the boxes on that?
Sure. First and foremost, your property management software, your primary kind of home-based software, if you will. Yardi, RealPage, Entrata, Resman. There's a few others out there that we'll integrate with to ensure that if your team lives inside that home-based software, which they do, that we're going to keep you there.
Okay.
That just ensures, from a staff perspective, just keep in mind, a lot of times this decision is made at the corporate level. So when it gets rolled out to the staff level, we might have some pretty anxious folks that, right. What do I have to learn now? Is it another password? Is it another technology? And the reality is, once we integrate behind the scenes with these primary property management software solutions, all they're doing is operating within that software as they do today. And then our task automations and the integrations will take care of the rest.
So your user interface at the head end level is passing through these other systems, and it's something they toggle to when they're within that broader user interface. Help paint the picture for me a little.
Sure. So I'll use Yardi as an example. If I'm living in Yardi, if I'm moving a resident into Yardi, automatically, as a result of the integration, I wouldn't change anything that I do in Yardi today. But behind the scenes, what we'll do is create that residence, automatically create that welcome email to onboard them into the technology.
Okay.
Same goes for an outboard.
So there's data exchange and population of tasks and
exactly.
such within that system, and it's not just about a UI living in the same visual space.
Yeah, it'll populate. So it'll create that user on the PointCentral side without the property staff member ever having to log into PointCentral. So they're using Yardi as they do today, and the integration works behind the scenes. Here's another good example. On a move out, if Taylor moves out of a community, of course, Taylor loses access to that apartment home. But as a result of the integration, without having to log into PointCentral, the door will automatically lock and the thermostat goes into vacant unit mode, which changes the thermostat into more of an energy efficiency mode. So now maintenance isn't having to go up and relock the door and check the thermostat and sort of hit that punch list. That's done for them, and they never have to leave Yardi in order for that to happen.
Very cool. Anything else we should talk about on the compatibility side of things? Any other special sauce components or particular competitive advantages you guys have there?
I just, a couple more I'd name is access control. Most communities have some form of access control today, and PointCentral we have the ability to take over existing access control systems in a retrofit scenario, or have our own native solution via the alarm.com commercial solution if it's sort of a blank slate. So there's this, again, the goal is to sort of detangle and defragment these disparate technologies and ensure that they're streamlined onto a single solution. This can happen for intercoms as well. So we come across a good number of communities that might have these legacy telephone-based intercom systems that they may not be modern, but they're fairly expensive to replace. We can take those over in most cases and modernize that intercom, which is especially useful for self-guided tours, or integrate with the Butterfly MX type solutions of the world. Yeah. It's a modern video-based solution. And so, we'll look for opportunities for technologies that have gained traction and integrate them into our ecosystem.
Yeah. So we didn't have this in the session plan, but I'm going to go there. It's just like we talked a lot about these feature sets, but as you go through them, and it sounds so awesome, the question that comes to mind is, how are you able to do that? How are you able to deliver that with your partners at the integration level and monitoring level? Can you give us a quick off the cuff overview of that, even though we didn't have a plan, Mike, in the coverage here?
At its core, alarm.com, our parent company is alarm.com. We share resources with alarm.com. At its core, it's a technology company. There's over 1,000 employees, and a good portion of that is software engineers and developers. So we have extremely talented team members that focus on relationships with these other technologies. So, we have dozens and dozens of different types of integration partners. And it really takes a lot of QA and specialization to ensure that that technology integration is seamless and functioning efficiently. And that's really the core of what we do is create these software solutions and products and or partner with them to deliver that seamless experience.
So you've got a team of software applications engineers that are partnering with your integrator partners and the client at the multifamily property to really work through these think through and work through these integrations and make them seamless. Yeah.
Exactly right.
And how many do you have? Do you have like dozens, hundreds of applications engineers? I mean,
yeah, more the latter. Yeah, so a much larger team than I'm probably even aware of, John. But
yeah, I think that's it's interesting to bring it up because the technology, especially at the integration level, and with a lot of the major manufacturers and suppliers, there are a lot of small and medium-sized companies where it's onesie twosie specialists who can get to do work like this when they can. And then you look at players like alarm.com and the amount of resource that's available to turn on to these high volume multifamily projects, and it's an order of magnitude difference, and it doesn't necessarily come through in the normal conversations, but important to understand the scalability and the ability to deliver on a volume basis with folks like PointCentral.
Yeah, I'd add one thing to that, John. I appreciate you saying it, is that we touched a little bit earlier on the impact this has in several stakeholders, building impact, asset owner and operator impact, staff and resident impact, right? So the importance of working with a provider that's done this, millions and millions of times, I can't tell you and stress how important that is, because if something goes wrong, it impacts a lot of people. And I know that this is prop tech is a hot space to be in. But we have a good number of customers that will come to us simply because of our track record. Alarm.com is in their home. They've seen alarm.com. They've worked with alarm.com and PointCentral. So that it's an important place to be, and it's a really important time to choose the right partner.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the cleanup spot here, which is financial analysis and performance. And I'm going to flip to the slide here, which Taylor prepared for us. Taylor, you built an entire software engine, around this at Innovative NOI. Can you walk us through the factors that go into a comprehensive financial analysis for tech? I think that's the best place for us to start.
Absolutely.
And welcome to the webcast. Sorry you were waiting on the sidelines so long, but that's what happens. We teed it all up for you. You're the creator.
And really, thank you for having me. I do think that really I couldn't have asked for a better introduction with you guys going over those three bubbles, really the three of the four quadrants, because ultimately those three different quadrants you just covered are very important to understand financially as you're considering new types of prop tech, and really understanding, how many elements of your business or the multifamily business does that piece of prop tech actually impact. So, you guys touched a little bit on some of the maintenance benefits, some of the resident experience benefits. To me, they all come down to one really foundation, which is that good technology you never realize is there. Good technology is something that only really adds benefit and adds value to a pre-existing process. And really the way multifamily communities have been operating for many, many years, it's it's very, very, very step by step. You know, everything is slow to move to new technology. So there's things such as you guys mentioned, moving people in and out of systems like Yardi. You know, these are processes that residents and owner operators are familiar with on both sides. And previously, you know, all these different steps, such as getting a key to take care of a maintenance issue in a community or moving a resident in, all these things, they happen anyways. So really what these technologies such as PointCentral really enable is the automation behind all those pre-existing operational components. So what we've been able to do is break those components down, leveraging real market data and of course our proprietary AI. And that gives us the ability to generate within a 5% variance, what an owner operator could expect if they were to deploy it at scale, and then measure all of the value that they're seeing from that. So we're kind of trying to help the owners out, and really before they spend millions of dollars in business intelligence software so they can measure these things, as well as deploying thousands of units of this technology just to comprehend its value. We work with partners like PointCentral and many others in the prop tech space across all niches to really help them make educated and informed decisions.
Right. So give us the big buckets of the financial analysis, right? There's some analysis of the revenue lift potential. There's some analysis of the building operation savings. And then I think you're looking at different models for how to subsidize or not those investments, et cetera. Can you walk us through that at a high level?
Sure. In the past, most of the time, NOI is a very common term, and it's calculated based on cash assumption. So assuming you're going to increase your rent.
And NOI, break down the acronym for us.
Yeah, net operating income.
Okay.
So essentially in the past, owner operators have had to rely on cash. And what that means is that they have to value a technology based on some form of rent lift. So because they didn't have the ability to dive into all those things we just kind of talked about, which are what are the things that are already happening on the community, how much time goes into those things, and how much money is already being spent to keep that business operating in a positive direction. We're able to take those pre-existing cash-on-cash return analysis, which is done widely by most companies, and pair that in tandem with the intangible operational benefits of a technology. And then, of course, we provide an overview of what both of those look like combined.
Right. And on the rent lift side of things, you could just cover the cost, or you could charge what you think the market will bear and realize margin on those costs. And you can realize that over time or more quickly. And you guys give them the ability to model that stuff out, right?
We do. We essentially want to understand, because every owner operator has a different business model. Some like to build with the intention of selling. Some like to purchase assets and renovate those assets and ultimately put them in a better position down the line. We call that value add. But really, you know, with every owner having a different need, you know what I mean, where a new owner or a new developer would be more concerned about on the valuation end of things. How is this technology going to increase the sale value? You know, that value add customer may be more concerned about how do we just lower operational expenses overall. So we try to give a really holistic snapshot of all of that information.
Cool. So tell people a little bit about your journey in this space and why you might be a reliable resource on these factors, because not everybody knows Taylor.
Yeah. So, you know, really my multifamily career started when I was at Alliance Residential Company. I was hired as a software implementation analyst, and that was back in 2017. And one of the first things I was allowed to do there was audit their entire portfolio. And at the time, they had over 120,000 units. So it was really my introduction to multifamily. Happened to be at the largest developer in the nation at the time, and one of the largest multifamily managers. And I was overwhelmed with all of the different, you know, piecemeal technologies that all these different communities had implemented, and all the different issues that existed between all these different technologies not communicating well. So, after being at Alliance, learning through the audit what the challenges were and being empowered to pursue some of the largest pilots of new technologies such as smart home automation, we were able to determine what were some of the values outside of the cash on cash typical NOI analysis. And that gave us a solid foundation on how to pursue, how to really pursue and approach these new technologies from a holistic standpoint as an organization and try to set standards around that technology. So started as an analyst and I became the innovation department head at that organization. And after leaving Alliance, after almost 2 years, I was actually brought on at BH Management, which is another top 10 manager. Very different business model than Alliance. They don't do any new development. They're primarily a value add. That just goes to show the differences in business models, even though the size is similar. And, it was really BH's goal. They put me as the director of innovation services there to deploy smart home automation technology at scale as well. But of course, they were worried about the operational efficiency benefits instead of on the other side where Alliance was worried about valuation for sale price, things like that. So it gave me a good exposure to both sides of the coin at two of the largest organizations in the nation. And ever since then, this has kind of been what I've been focused on.
I'm going to bring Mike here in a second, but I'm curious about the rent lift for the different feature sets, and I think we're still at a relatively early phase, maybe the end of the beginning and the beginning of the middle. With if you look at the overall apartment market in terms of technology being implemented, and we've looked at it as lift, but as we get more deeply penetrated, is there going to be a cost to not implementing technology? Are you going to have to decrease your expectations on rent when you don't have X, Y, and Z feature sets? Do you see that day coming?
Absolutely. And it's already getting here, surprisingly enough, because the generations that are renting longer are the younger generations such as mine, the millennials, and the Gen Zs below. They're renting longer and longer and not buying homes anymore. They're simply just moving from apartment to apartment, and they're looking for a more flexible lifestyle, and really multifamily real estate allows that opportunity. So now in even this market and day and age, they're looking for, is there a community that's going to allow them to take advantage of things like DoorDash, things like package delivery, things like all these different components that someone within my generation or lower have grown up with, and really we expect it in these living environments. So when we tour a community that may be a little bit cheaper, but it doesn't have all these efficiencies, it's going to cost us more on electricity. We're going to have issues having packages delivered. We're not going to be able to order food, things like that to our unit. That is a huge deal when we think about, where do we want to live? Because ultimately we choose to spend money on rent, not because we have to, but because of the convenience. Whereas the older generation, older demographic, they haven't had a lot of these efficiencies and I would say easy life type technologies that have grown in the last 10 to 15 years. So again, it's something that we consider to be a foundational requirement in our living environment. And as that population continues to grow, we're seeing it more and more.
So Mike, you've been working with Taylor and and other partners in delivering this sort of financial analysis. Just give us some of your perspective on it. Where have you seen the ahas or the relief from clients on this? How is it useful in terms of having an intelligent, informed, thoughtful discussion about the technology investments?
It's a good question. I think if we go back to a couple of things we touched on earlier, your operators understand the impact this has at the building level and for the staff. The IT professionals understand the importance of integrating with kind of base technology solutions that ensure there's network and data security and that it behaves well with existing systems. So, I think we've sort of turned the corner in the space with our operators, our tech folks. And then when you get to the C-level, maybe CFO that wants to understand, okay, yes, we think there's savings, but how much is there? And we can have those conversations directly, but it's also really nice to have a third party to say, you know what, why don't we run, an impact analysis through a third party, and we'll show you, someone who's been there, done that, to the tune of 20, 30,000 times, whatever that number is, Taylor, that you've overseen these. And then that light bulb, it doesn't flicker, it stays on.
Right. Well, let's take a look at a specific implementation, right? The names are not shown to protect the innocent, but this is an actual example of how you guys have teamed up on an analysis of a PointCentral implementation. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So really, this is a client of ours at Innovative NOI. Part of what we do is actually work with owner operators and essentially walk them through if they're looking for someone like us to help them with that process. So we do provide the analysis, but of course, this is actually our client. So I wanted to make sure that was thrown out there.
Mm-hmm.
So this specific community, 278 units in San Antonio, Texas, they approached us. They wanted to understand the value of smart home technology as an overview. And at the time, they were very confused because, like Mike said, right, there's a lot of value. They can see that value, but ultimately there's still a lot of confusion in the marketplace. So we worked with them to help them not only determine which type of hardware configuration would align with their goals, but also we were able to leverage our impact analysis to show them in real time what are those benefits. And that's kind of how we came to a very specific outcome. So in this case, this community decided to go with PointCentral primarily because of the things listed there, which are, things like energy cost reduction, mold damage reduction. But the big one in Texas is that HVAC maintenance expense reduction. So this community, this was a value add project. So it was a community built in the late 90s. And they had a pretty significant annual expense on maintenance specifically for the HVAC units, which is, not probably a surprise. But that was really one of the big deciding factors with PointCentral is their ability to leverage that HVAC analytical component and to proactively approach the issues that may be coming down the line. And since the deployment, while I didn't put the actual percentage here, they have seen a reduction of over 60% on an annual basis already just in the first year on how much less they've had to spend because they've been able to proactively approach those issues before the actual unit fails and fix maybe one part, as opposed to when one part fails, it's like a catastrophic failure across the entire unit. Next thing you know, you're spending 5 times more than expected. So while yes, maintenance, of course, the actual maintenance itself has not changed much, it's the replacement costs of the units that would be damaged from not having that insight. So that's one real example of this specific implementation. But really they've seen a huge increase in time given to the maintenance staff because they're not running around to get keys when they're going from unit to unit. The leasing staff, because of the integration with their pre-existing system, they utilize Resman. That's their PMS of choice, and that's property management software. Basically, as Mike said earlier, there is no having to shift between multiple interfaces. It is seamless within their pre-existing processes within their company. And so, of course, that has translated additionally to seeing an increase in resident renewals, as well as the prospects that are, you asked earlier about the people that are coming to expect these technologies, and do we expect this to detour people if they don't have it? We're seeing yes, because of the prospect conversion has increased. So that, of course, could be directly related to that. But on the analysis report itself, we have 3 categories that we kind of try to bucket everything into. And really that's vacant unit related savings, maintenance related savings, and resident retention cost recovery. And even though each one of those buckets has many, many things underneath each bucket, those are the 3 primary categories and kind of target those stakeholders that may be interested in that specific issue. So we can see here that totally separate from cash on cash, on an annual basis, this property is seeing a savings of about $118,000 a year on pre-sunk operational expenses they were already spending that they're no longer having to spend. So
Right.
that's huge, absolutely huge.
And in addition to that, they're realizing 46,000 and change in annual NOI improvement, correct?
Correct, because they are charging $40 per unit per month.
Mm-hmm. And so if we, basically I'm looking at your $477,000 full term cost. You've got 709 in full term savings. You've got another 250,000 or so in annual NOI. So it's $500,000 plus over 6 years. And theoretically, the lifetime of this system is longer than 6 years, but this is our security industry comfortable 6-year analysis that we fell into here. But there's more dollars to be made and saved over the longer term if everything's done well, right?
Absolutely. And I do think it's worth highlighting. So you mentioned the 46,000 in NOI they're seeing as an increase. So that was just the income of the $40 increase itself. That was not considering any of the actual efficiency impact as well.
Right.
If we look at the top line of green boxes there, where it says efficiency project impact at selected unit premium of $40, that's what we like to call the real impact of the technology. And you can see there that when you combine that cash on cash with that efficiency savings, we're actually impacting NOI at $164,000 a year. And it's cash flow positive in year one with only a 2.9 year ROI.
Right.
So that I think is a big deciding factor right now when owners are trying to understand, yes, we can see if we raise rent and we spend this $500,000, sure, it's going to increase by 50,000 a year, our NOI. But if they can see it in the other terms and see, okay, we're already spending this amount of money and we're going to get a little bit here, and ultimately we're going to be able to pay for this whole $500,000 project in less than 3 years. Well, why wouldn't they do it? And that's typically the answer that those owners give us, is that once they see both sides of the coin, they're overwhelmed and they're very much more excited about moving forward with the technology.
Mike, you have a really easy job.
It's just a handoff to Taylor, John. Right?
You got the "it's too good to be true" objection to deal with, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, he makes a great point, and Taylor's had the background to put this type of model together, which does help us. We go through case studies, and we even offer kind of point solution ROI case studies on, hey, here's some of the things we've seen from water or HVAC alone. But Taylor's done a brilliant job of just modeling it all together, which is really eye-opening.
Guys, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff here, some actual examples, a kind of a templated approach in terms of the 4 quadrants, and identified some of the factors in each of those. So I think we've done a good job for the day, and that maybe we should wrap up and with our thank yous. Thank you, PointCentral, for sponsoring this, and Mike for working to take this topic into a really useful realm. There's the website for PointCentral. There's Mike's email address, so he can do his easy job of selling you the systems out there. Taylor, I didn't give your email address out, but people can find you because you're not a sponsor of this webcast, but you've been a great contributor.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you guys thinking this one through with me, and doing a nice job on the delivery and your remote sets for the video recording. Until next time, this is John Galante signing off for TecHome Builder.